Just take a breath with me, because I hope that you are having a magnificent experience this morning, joining us right where you are. If you haven't yet taken a moment to share the video onto your page so that other people know that you are tuning in this moment. And I've seen some of the comments coming through. I know some of our pet friends are watching as well. So hello to Henry and Oliver, and maybe Lenny Cat might be out there as well. So we've got all of our friends near and far, and two-legged and four-legged and everything else with us this morning. Good morning, Spiritual Living Center of Atlanta. I'm grateful to be with you this morning. My name is David Alexander. I'm the spiritual director here, and I'm so grateful last week for the presence and the wisdom of practitioner Baji Daniels for filling in for me. Did a magnificent job as the comments are rolling in. Our bench is deep at SLCA, and she did an absolutely marvelous job with the message Unwritten, looking at writing the script of our life, and that we have the power and authority of our consciousness to direct that. And I'm going to continue on that thread this morning, picking up where she left off and where she so beautifully led us. So today, our theme is Fire in the Belly. Fire in the Belly, and it's part of our theme of the month, which is about bright beginnings, bright new beginnings, right? This idea that we are in the springtime, we're emerging with Palm Sunday and Easter, and the consciousness that awakens in those moments, that those holidays give us a chance to symbolically step into and metaphorically step into and recreate for ourselves. And this week is no different, right? We have another wonderful spiritual tradition to honor and recognize, and that is the tradition of Ramadan. Ramadan began on Friday night, and or Friday, and is a week-long tradition in the Muslim faith and Islamic tradition of fasting from sunrise to sundown. But it's not just fasting from food; it's also mentally fasting, right? During the day, you fast from food. Maybe include water, but you also fast from anything else. Sex, gambling, gossip, judgment of others, all of those sorts of things. It is a mental fast to cleanse the mind and to allow a purification of the fire of the spirit to come forward, so that you in the next year more purified, let go of resentments and judgments and habits and ideas that are bogging you down. It's one of the 5 pillars of the Islamic faith, and is a beautiful tradition. And in many ways, we have been humanity, society, has been given the opportunity to go through a sort of virtual Ramadan, which is simply to say what happens, because one of the questions that emerges out of the practice of Ramadan is to pay attention to what's emerging in me when my body isn't busy processing food, right? Then suddenly it can take care of other things. It burns off fat. It metabolizes things differently. My mind, if I'm not focused on judging, criticizing others, if I'm not engaging in other habits that are keeping me numbed or checked out, then suddenly there's a purification that takes place, and I can pay attention to something deeper, something below the surface. And that's why I say in many ways we've had the opportunity. Now, maybe not everybody has taken the opportunity, but we've had the opportunity to go through sort of a virtual Ramadan. Like, in other words, who are we when we're not busy, stuck in traffic? Who are we when we're not going to the office every day? Who are we when we're not worried about this thing or that thing? What emerges when suddenly we give ourselves the space and the time to pay attention to what's trying to happen, right? Now, not all of us have had that opportunity, right? I'm like many people working from home. I've been busier than I've ever been. People are like, oh, I'm taking time to do this and do that and read this book. I've been here working busier than I have ever been. But I'm still sticking with that question. What's emerging in me as I see the thoughts of anxiety arise and questioning and wondering about what's next? If I let that settle for a moment and say, what's beneath that, right? And how do I access this fire in the belly? Muslims believe that absence of these activities creates a purification in the body, or a fire in the belly, a purification of the soul, where we can truly see what needs to be seen around us, unencumbered by the distractions, right? And suddenly you can see clearly what is yours to do, right? And bringing forward your best self. And so that's the question I want to sit with you this morning. What is yours to do when you allow yourself to see what needs to be seen and everything else kind of settles down? This is the moment that our society is in. And it's an opportunity to really get clear. Fire in the belly is used as a phrase and an idea and a technique when we talk about affirmative prayer. If you take Foundations course or Beyond Limits or any other version of affirmative prayer courses in one of our centers, and particularly if you go into practitioner training to become a professional licensed prayer practitioner for Centers for Spiritual Living, you will learn that fire in the belly is a phrase we often use that speaks to the power of our prayer coming into fruition. That an effective prayer has that fire in the belly. It has that passion. It has that zeal. It has that conviction behind it. And so what do we mean by fire in the belly? We mean that thing that burns inside of us that knows that it knows that it knows what is true. And so how do we access that? How do we make room for that to come up? And what I've noticed is that I'm seeing it happen in humanity right now. I don't know if you can see it, but there's something happening in humanity right now that we're discovering this fire in the belly, this passion that we have, that in the midst of chaos, in the midst of uncertainty, in the midst of all of these things, there's a passion and a zeal that is burning through, that it wants to make sure that we know that even though we're distant, we still care. Right? So the 7 o'clock weekly go out on your porch or whatever and clap and make noise for the healthcare workers, right? That's just something that emerged out of humanity. The drive-by, right? Drive-by has a whole different connotation in this era, right? Because people are doing drive-by birthday parties. Drive-by elementary school teachers are driving by neighborhoods to say hello to their students. So there's this urge and this fire for us to be connected, even while we honor and recognize these social distancing to keep everybody safe. There's a fire in the belly to know that we are capable of something truly great. I've seen wonderful things like grocery stores are purchasing commercially farmed food that otherwise has been going to waste because it's raised for restaurants and all of that. And our system is so convoluted and messed up that you can't take that food and send it to the grocery stores. And why is that the case? I have no idea, but that's apparently the rule. But some grocery stores, like Publix here in Atlanta, are buying some of that food and then sending it to the shelters, to the food pantries and shelters in our communities. And so these things are happening, right? These things are a natural byproduct of our nature to reach out, connect, and to create more compassion and love and connection with each other. Ernest Holmes in The Science of Mind says, if we could stand aside and let the one perfect life flow through us, we would not help but heal people. Let me say that again. I want you to take that in. If we could stand aside and let this one perfect life flow through us, we could not help but heal people. I love that. Right? It would be the natural byproduct of our connection with Source, the divinity and the wholeness of who we are, and our desire to let that out as our connection with each other. Right? If we could just stand aside, if we could stand aside from the busyness, if we could stand aside from the distractions, if we could stand aside from all of the things that are getting in the way and allow that divinity to come through. That's the fire in the belly. On Friday night, this past Friday night, the Association for Global New Thought, which I am a proud member of the leadership team, leadership council of, hosted an online rally. Some of you may know that that was a rally that was supposed to be here at SLCA in our sanctuary on Wednesday night. We had to repurpose it a little bit and put it online. And it had a stellar lineup of movement builders within New Thought, Mary Manning Morrissey and Harry Morgan Moses and Sheila McKeithen of the UFBL and many others. And they all took turns sharing their insights about what was happening at this particular time. If you haven't seen it, you can go to the Association for Global New Thought Facebook and watch it. It's still there for you to watch now. And it was a wonderful experience to hear and to be connected as a large New Thought community in that moment. And we did what we know how to do really well. We lifted up the vision possible in this time. We lifted up the vision of what's possible for how this moment of global rest is a pregnant pause to birth something new. It was a wonderful, feel-good event and experience. But I want, if I can, bring to you a moment of critique as well. And by the way, this is, and because we're public on Facebook, this is not a critique I'm keeping private, right? This is a critique I'll share with my colleagues at AG&T. As you know, I, in the prophetic tradition, I like to bring forward critique as much as I like to bring forward vision, because it's that tension, that push and pull that allows the ingenuity of what we're really capable of to come forward. So it's not a bad thing. But we as New Thought people are designed to find the good, right? We're designed to share the good. We're designed to focus on the good. We're trained in classes to affirm and to declare and to bring forward and to call forth the good things in life, the good things for ourselves, the good things in humanity. And so it's our natural default state. So it's not really a surprise that we gathered all of these New Thought leaders and they focused on all the beautiful, wonderful things that are happening and emerging. And I have no doubts about all that was shared on Friday night. However, I am concerned that we as a movement, as a people, might slip into what I would call a New Thought coma and miss a moment for prophetic zeal. Right? You know the New Thought coma, or I sometimes call it the New Thought lobotomy. Come on, talk to me, somebody. Where are my people at? I hope you're reacting out there, right? This New Thought lobotomy is this glaze that we put on our consciousness that just says, well, it's all good all the time, and we just see the good, and there's something emerging in humanity at this moment, and isn't it beautiful? And yada, and we know how to do that. It's our default setting, and it's not bad or wrong, right? It's beautiful, but it might be missing something. That there's a calling for prophetic zeal. Right? Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said in his book, Strength to Love, and in many of his sermons, he says, if the church does not recapture its prophetic zeal, it will become an irrelevant social club without moral or spiritual authority. Prophetic zeal is the passion, the fire in the belly to speak to moments of crises in humanity and to bring forward a vision of greater possibility. But it has to be done through the lens of prophetic zeal that calls to critique the places where we have missed the mark. And that is the piece that I want to bring forward. So what is it that we have authority to speak of in this moment? As New Thought people, our authority comes from our practical applications of the principles of consciousness, right? Our authority comes from what we study and what we know about the capacity of the mind to heal the body, to change conditions in the world, and to bring forward possibility. And by the way, in terms of authority, you only have authority over what you can demonstrate. So if you're still practicing in your life, then stay in the practice lane, right? We only have authority over what we can demonstrate. And so we're called to practice. That's why we're practitioners. That's why every minister is always a practitioner, because we're just practicing every day. And then as we practice and we get some sense of mastery or skill of the principles, then we have some authority over that. We can speak about what we know, right? We know a thing or two because we've seen a thing or two, right? We can think a thing or two and know that when we think, there's a law that responds to the thinking. Who's with me out there, okay? So we claim that we know a thing or two. And what is it that we claim as a movement and as a people that we know? We claim that we know that everything is made of consciousness. All forms, both physical and mental, are held together by a mental glue called thoughts. That's what everything is made of. Consciousness. Consciousness is everything. Those of you who've been in my classes, you know that. CIE. Consciousness is everything. All forms, both physical and mental, are held together by mental thoughts. A mental glue called thoughts. That is to say, anything that is so only because thought says that it is so. And there is thought that is in agreement with that thought that says that it's so. That's why we say, and so it is. Because we're adding our thought to say that we agree that it is so, that we have said that it is so. I'm gonna preach the heck out of this computer screen here this morning, right? Anything that is so only because thought says that it is so. And then there are thoughts that come into agreement that that thing is so. And so it is. The world is held together by consciousness. And very often, the world is also held together by very unconscious behavior. That is to say that which we have relegated a certain amount of our authority and power and control to unconscious behavior and unconscious buy-in and unconscious questioning and unconscious bias, that we have allowed it to all go on autopilot, right? But that which has been relegated to autopilot and unconscious bias and all of those other things, all of those things can be snatched at any moment, the moment that thought decides that we can take control again. You're following what I'm saying? And that moment is right now. That moment is this moment that we are in humanity. There's a tremendous surrender underway of the old, right? It's a tremendous surrendering of our old ways of being and our old constructs. And we're seeing the pain in society right now that is emerging, that is, as my friend Bishop Barber, William Barber says, that this pandemic is growing along the fissures of our society. Right? Those places that are broken, those places of inequity, those places of injustice, those wounds that have not been closed and healed yet because we haven't done the work, that those are the places where we're seeing the most pain, right? That's why in Chicago, where African Americans make up 30% of the population, but 70% of the cases of corona right now, right? How is that possible? That's a festering of the virus along the fissures of our society, right? And so the pain that we are seeing, and this is something we've been discussing in a Monday night class last week, which again, tomorrow night, you can join us, not too late. We're talking about that the amount of pain that we see or that we experience collectively or personally in relationship to surrendering of the old. So let me recap that. When we surrender the old, there's an amount of pain that gets felt. And that the amount of pain that gets felt is in direct correlation to the commitment that we have to the old. Strong commitment to the old way of being, strong commitment to the old patterns, strong commitment to the old thoughts, high level of pain as the surrender takes place. Right? That's why the Buddhists talk about suffering, easing suffering by releasing attachments. Right? We release the attachment, you release the conviction to the old, and you decrease the amount of pain because the surrender becomes more grace-filled, you see. So yes, we are in a moment of pregnant pause. We are in a moment of awakening and breathing together. All of those wonderful positive things that were said on Friday night, and that any New Thought leader would say right now about this moment, all of those things are true. But new creation does not come without pain. Birth does not come without pushing. The old ways of being and doing don't surrender without a fight. And we don't release them without experiencing the pain of the collective attachment that we've had to them for as long as we've had that attachment. So it's a mistake to simply think that we are in a kumbaya moment of awakening, right? That we're seeing in Los Angeles, clear blue skies right now, and the canals in Venice are clear because they're not being, the mud and the grit is not being stirred up, and there's some jellyfish swimming up, and you can see it clearly. That these moments are not going to stay that way. Right? We're not in this great moment of awakening that's just going to happen. And it's just going to stay that way. The old way is going to rear its head and seek to regain control. In any moment of prophetic transformation, the old always tries to come back and gain power again. Right? We're in the throes of a revolution of consciousness. We're in the throes, we're right in the middle of a major revolution of global shift of consciousness. And therefore, we better have a fire in the belly for where we are going instead of where we've been. Because where we've been, that conviction will rise up and it will try to come back. Right now, see, that's why I say it's a mistake to think it's just a kumbaya moment. We're all just, we're breathing together. We're clapping outside at 7 o'clock, and we're, tossing toilet paper across the street to our neighbors. And I used to do that as a kid, but it was up into their trees. It's all, we're all just getting along, and it's just so wonderful. No, right now there are forces at work that want certain parts of our economy to go back to work, to put their lives at risk without testing in place, without masks, without the proper procedures in place, simply so that the economy and their pockets can continue to get filled, right? Because they have decided that their lives are dispendable and disposable, right? So if we don't have a fire in the belly about where we're going, and the vision that we have for a world that works for everyone, which is what we say our vision is at SLCA and at Centers for Spiritual Living, then the forces of inertia will have their way with us, right? So how is it? A couple of weeks ago, we were looking at Easter and Palm Sunday. How is it that Jesus grows up in a world and finds his people in an occupied state of tyrannical rule of the Roman Empire over his people? If the history of his people, and particularly Passover, Palm Sunday experience of Passover, is the history of his people, they're celebrating their liberation from Egypt. How did they go from being liberated to being captive again? Right? That question is part of the fire in the belly that burns in the prophetic zeal that is Jesus' messages to the world. He's saying, how did this happen? How did we get here? Right? And the answer is simple. The answer is an abdication of mental authority. Whew. Hear me, people. Hear me. Wake up. Lean in. How it happens is an abdication of our mental authority. When we surrender authority of our consciousness to the old ways of being, when we surrender our consciousness and the mental authority that we have to the thoughts of otherness and separation and division and the old habits of us and them. And so I want you to use this time to discover the fire in the belly of your mental clarity about the world that we are trying to birth. The conviction, the fire in the belly that says something in you that knows that it knows that it knows that this is what must come forward and it will not be denied. But you got to have clarity about that. It's not just a kumbaya dream. It's not just we'll get along better. It's not just, it has specifics to it, right? It has to have specifics to it. So this is a moment to lean in and to sharpen our tools of mental consciousness. This is why connecting via spiritual community is so important right now. Online and in all the ways, classes and meeting with practitioners and doing what we need to do to sharpen our mental tools of mental consciousness, right? So why it's so important, because we are being given a gift in this moment. The intelligence of the universe has called us forward. It has asked us to cease all other operations and to put our attention where the pain is. And it has shown us clearly, listen to me. The universe did not call you to have some time off at home. The universe did not call you to become a homeschool parent, parenting your, schooling your children at home. The universe didn't call you for all those things that it looks like. The universe has called us forward, you and I, to cease all other operations so that we might put our attention where the pain is. And the pain is in the inequities and the fissures of our society. It has shown us exactly where they are. It has given us the whereabouts to be able to see specifically where those are. And when we see where they are, then we have the opportunity to say, how are we going to develop the fire in the belly and the prophetic zeal for creating a world that works for everyone, that addresses that pain, that ensures that we don't go back to that, right? The inefficiency of economic resources, the inequalities in the healthcare distribution system, the food deserts that we have in our American cities across the nation, particularly in low-income areas and people in which there are high populations of Black and brown bodies. On and on and on. We could go into the details of where the inequities are. Those inequities, here's the thing, folks. Here's the thing. Those inequities only exist because thought has held them in place, right? Remember, what did I say that we have authority over? What is it that we claim as people to know about the world? We claim to know that consciousness is everything, and that everything that is created in form, either physical or mental, is held together by thought. So the pandemic, the virus did not create these inequities, it exposed them. And what did it expose? It exposed what we have created. But here's the thing. We can be the imaginal cells of the butterfly emerging and coming forward, and we can create something new if we have the prophetic zeal and imagination and the moral imagination to say, we're not going back there. Thought has created those inequities, but a new thought will create a new reality. Because we have the moral courage to say enough is enough. Because we have the strength to resist the forces. I hope you're understanding what I'm saying. It's really odd preaching like this without an audience talking back to me. But I hope you're there. Don't go back to sleep, right? The inequities exist as social constructs of the collective mind of our society, and they are being exposed so that we are able to see them for what they are, manifestations of separation consciousness. And so if we want to be in kumbaya, oh, the world is coming together, oh, we're all breathing together, we're all, oh, yes, yes, yes. Yes, we are. And let's put that to good use. Let's put that collective consciousness to good use by not going back to sleep. Let's direct it to the healing of the inequities of our world, because those inequities were created by thought, were held in place by thought. A either conscious or unconscious agreement that, well, it just is that way because it is that way, because we can't do anything different about it. Somebody tried, but it didn't work, and not enough people voted for it. Blah, blah, blah. Those are all thought constructs. And the world that we're going to is going to be put together by new thought constructs, if you and I choose new thought constructs. Baji quoted Reverend Ike last week. My favorite Reverend Ike quote is this: "You can't lose with the stuff I use." Right? You can't lose with the stuff I use, because I'm using the power of the mind, because I'm using the power of imagination, because I'm using the power of constructive thought, because I'm using the power of affirmative prayer, because I'm using the power of the I am that I am that I am that I am, that knows that it knows that it knows, the fire in the belly. You can't lose against that, because one with God is a majority, because when I speak, my word has authority and power and conviction, and it goes forth, and there is a universal law that responds to it and brings back to me exactly what I have put into it. You can't lose with the stuff I use. My favorite theologian, Paul Tillich, says, when destiny leads humanity to the edge of his being, then we stand before the choice to either fall back on that which we have always known, or else to transcend ourselves. Let me say it again. When destiny leads one to the edge of their being, you stand before the choice to either fall back on that which you have always known, or else to transcend yourself. We are being asked to transcend our old selves. Society is being asked to transcend its old self. But the forces of the old constructs will call us back. Comfort will call you back. Right, the old ways of being, the inertia of comfort and numbing out and just not having enough wherewithal. Well, I got to be in traffic, and I got to do this, and I got to focus on my family, and I don't have enough time to think about those world issues. I just got to, all of those that inertia will call us back. It's kind of like if anybody's, I'm sure I'm the only one online today who's been in a codependent relationship at some point in my life, but it's like an old lover calling you back, right? And you're like, no, I've turned the page. I'm going in a new direction. I have new standards I got standards now. I don't know what I was doing back then, but I got standards now, and this is what I'm doing, right? And you get that phone call, or you get that text, or you get that whatever, and you're like, oh, well. Right? Because that old lover, that old space is putting on their best perfume and their best act, and the parts, not the parts that you were dissatisfied with, but the parts that you really loved, the parts that, got you going, right? And that old romantic part comes back and says, hey, come on, what about just one more time, just tonight, just right now, right? And you got to be like, no, you got to have the strength to go, no, I'm not going there anymore. I've got a new vision for my life. I've got new for what I want. I've got the prophetic zeal. I've got the fire in the belly for what's happening. I'm not going there anymore, right? And so you and I have a choice. We can numb out, because we could say changing the world and creating a world that works for everyone is just too much work. Or we can get good and angry about it. We can see the inequities that are happening, and we can get good and angry and make a fuss about it. But that gets tiring after a while too. Protesting everything gets tiring. Or we can discover the fire in the belly for the world that we want to create. A fire that has prophetic zeal with it, that has the strength to resist the old, to march if we need to march, to sign petitions if we need to sign petitions, to resist the inertia of the old that will try to come back and regain control. And we could say, no, we're not going there anymore. We're not dealing with that anymore. We're not allowing ourselves to be divided like that anymore. We're going this direction. We're going in the direction of love and justice and peace and wholeness. We're going in the direction of, I don't care how hard it is, we're going for clean water in Flint, Michigan. We're going for education for everybody. We're going for high-speed internet in everybody's home so that education that's happening right now isn't just for those who have an extra computer in their house and 5 tablets for all of their children and all of those other. No, we're going so that we're going in the world in the direction that everybody gets educated and everybody has to the same things, and that there's enough food and resource and home and shelter, and we're going there. And I got a prophetic zeal about it that cannot be denied, because you can bet, as sure as the day is long, there are forces at work now that will, as much as we are in unity, will try to divide us again. They'll try to get us into camps and pit us against one another. But if we stand up and say, no, we're too strong, we've come together. I've been out in the cul-de-sac talking to my neighbors and saying, hey, need anything? We got a little extra toilet paper. You need any pasta sauce? We got, last time we went, we got the big bottle. So what do you need? And all of humanity is doing that right now. And have you noticed that nobody's asking to see anybody else's voter ID card? Right? The sharing of our resources isn't based on who we are or how we're politically affiliated or any other ideology. It's simply that we are human beings, right? And so when the forces that try to divide us come back, and sure enough, as like an old lover trying to romance us into that old relationship called separation, we'll come back if we stand strong enough and say, no, we're united now. You can't divide us anymore. We're united. We're together on this. We've got a fire in the belly and a vision for where we're going that can't be turned down. Whew. Then we can really change the world. That's the moment that we're in. And so my question for you today, beloveds, is what kind of world do you want to create? For yourself, for your family, for your spiritual community, for the world in which you interact with, and you have an aspect of the world that I don't have, and so we all make up the world together, right? What kind of world do you want to have? And are you willing to spend time to cultivate the prophetic zeal, the fire in the belly for what you're willing to stand up for? The resistance that you need to say, I'm not going to be divided against myself or against humanity anymore. I'm going to move forward in a way that is powerful and convincing and that will move mountains. Right? That's where we want to go. Charles Fillmore, the co-founder, along with his wife, Myrtle, of the Unity Movement, has one of my favorite affirmations to use, especially first thing in the morning. It says, I fairly sizzle with zeal and enthusiasm and spring forth with a mighty faith to do the things that ought to be done by me. I fairly sizzle with zeal and enthusiasm to spring forth with a mighty faith to do the things that ought to be done by me. That, my friends, is fire in the belly. Do you have the zeal, the enthusiasm to spring forth with a mighty faith to create a world that works for everyone? Do you know what that looks like? Do you know what that means in your neighborhood, in your schools, in your right where you live? Do you know what that looks like? And are you willing to resist the forces that will tell you that it's not possible? I invite you to just take a breath with me right here. Because this is what I know. There is a power in the universe greater than we are. Use it. We do use it every day and every hour that we think, that we affirm, that we stand in agreement with, the things that we hear on the news or that we unconsciously or consciously accept as part of our world. We're using a creative power all of the time. There is a power in the universe greater than I am, and I can and do use it. And now, from this moment forward, I wake each day with a zeal and enthusiasm, spring forward with a mighty faith to do what ought to be done by me today, to craft and to cast a vision of a world that works for everyone, a world of justice and peace and harmony. And when I see the places of inequity, when I see the places of disenfranchisement, when I see the places of brokenness in our society that have been exposed, and thank God they have been exposed for a reason. They've been exposed so that my eyes might see them. And my heart might turn in such a way that says, no longer will I tolerate that as the status quo. No longer will I accept that as a condition that has to be. It exists because thought created it. And just as quickly as thought created it, thought can unthink it and create something else. And so I choose to think affirmatively. I choose to create a world that works for everyone. I choose to stand up for racial equality and justice and harmony in our world, and in economic justice and healthcare justice, and a world that works for everyone in such a way that we are all lifted up into our greatest yet to be. I claim to stand for that with such zeal, such fire in the belly, that I know that nothing can deny it, because we are stronger together than we are apart. And I know that something is happening right here and right now. It's moving out across the broadcast stations where people are tuning into this message, and it reverberates eternally in the ethers as it exists online forever, and that whenever people might touch this part of the message, it reverberates again and exists and echoes into the chambers of consciousness for all of eternity to hear it. And will continue to echo back into our hearts, asking each one of us with the ears to hear this prayer, to be willing vessels of its demonstration, to be willing vessels that carry it into the world. This is what I know. This is what is happening. And this is what Spiritual Living Center of Atlanta and the Greater Centers for Spiritual Living Movement stands for in this moment, with our partners in the Association for Global New Thought, and for justice seekers and social workers and community organizers at every level that seek to bring forward a world of good and more good. For this and so much more, I'm truly grateful and thankful. And I release this prayer, knowing that it's already done. And so it is. Okay. Where am I? What's next?
Woo! Reverend D is on fire today.
Thank you, Penelope.
Man.
Yes. I hope people are still tuning in. It's time for grateful giving. That's where we're at. Thank you so much. I want to just thank you for allowing me the platform, the technology to share with our community in this way. It's such a joy. We are reaching more people every week through this platform, because you're sharing the message, and people are participating online well beyond the greater Atlanta area. And we're so grateful to be a ministry that is relevant and available to each of us in this time, with practical tools for personal and global transformation. Many of our resources are available online for free with our meditations and prayer groups and connections. And we also have our online education and, of course, these Sunday messages. So please reach out. Prayer practitioners are available as well at any time. I'm grateful for all of the giving that comes in and circulates through SLCA. Our text to give number is on the screen, so thank you for participating in that however you choose. Any amount and every amount makes a difference as we continue to move forward and build this world together. So thank you so much for participating in that. Let us affirm together. I live in a universe of abundance. As I freely and joyfully give, I join in the divine flow, and all that I share with life returns to me multiplied abundantly. And so it is.